My name is Andrew, and for the past 3 years, I've been filming videos for my channel about abandoned places. My viewers crave thrills, so I'm always looking for something unique and atmospheric. Recently, one of my subscribers sent me coordinates for an abandoned psychiatric hospital on the outskirts of the state. Legends about this place were chilling. People say patients were treated with physical exercises and experimental methods that many did not survive. When I arrived, deep night had already fallen. The hospital building loomed above me, dark and unwelcoming, with walls peeling down to the bricks and empty eye sockets of broken windows. I turned on my camera, took a deep breath, and stepped inside through the shattered doors of the main entrance. Inside, it felt colder than outside. The corridors were soaked with dampness and smelled of mold. The flashlight beam revealed inscriptions on the walls, old catalogs of medicine scattered on the floor and rusty metal beds. My heart started beating faster. I was accustomed to creepy places, but tonight was different. It was too quiet, too tense. Step by step, I descended a wide staircase to the basement area. According to rumors, treatment rooms and operating theaters were located here. Through a half-open door, I saw metal tables covered in thick layers of dust, still holding old surgical instruments. But another door caught my attention. It was deeper in the basement, locked with a bolt from the outside. It looked much newer than everything else in the hospital, and that alarmed me even more. Slowly, I approached the door, unbolted it, and stepped inside. What I saw made my heart freeze in terror. Behind the door was a small room lit by a dim lamp hanging from the ceiling. The walls were stained with dried blood. In the center stood a rusty surgical table with fresh blood dripping onto the floor. My breathing quickened, and the camera shook in my trembling hands. Along the wall were metal cabinets filled with knives, clamps, syringes, and other instruments whose purposes I dreaded to imagine. The air was heavy, saturated with antiseptic and something even more revolting. As I approached the table, I realized the blood was fresh. Droplets trickled onto the floor. Suddenly, I heard sounds that made me freeze, approaching footsteps and muffled voices coming from the hallway. My heart pounded so loudly it seemed audible throughout the building. Panicked, I looked around for somewhere to hide. The footsteps grew closer, and I realized someone was coming directly here. Without hesitation, I dashed to a cabinet in the corner, quietly closed the door behind me, and held my breath as the door to the room creaked slowly open. Through a narrow gap in the cabinet door, I saw a figure dressed in a dirty medical coat and surgical mask, hiding most of his face. He approached the table, pulled out a bundle of keys from his pocket, and opened a drawer, retrieving a long, shiny knife. Behind him entered a second man, dragging something heavy. My heart skipped a beat when I realized it was a tied-up, barely alive man, struggling and mumbling through a gag. Terror overwhelmed me, leaving me unable to move. They placed the victim on the table, secured him with straps, and the masked man began meticulously arranging instruments next to him. Every move the torturer made was cold and mechanical. I knew I had to escape immediately, but my legs refused to obey. Frozen in horror, I understood clearly that if they noticed me, I would be next. I stood inside the cabinet, barely breathing, watching the horrifying scene unfold before me. The torturer slowly raised the knife and approached his victim. Suddenly, the bound man groaned louder, desperately trying to break free. At that moment, I felt my body regain the ability to move. Quietly opening the cabinet door, I started cautiously moving towards the exit, trying not to make the slightest sound. To my horror, the door creaked, instantly catching the attention of the torturer. Our eyes met. Cold dread overtook me completely. Without a second thought, I sprinted toward the room's exit, hearing the steps of my pursuer closing in behind me. I ran without looking back, hearing the furious footsteps behind me. My lungs burned, my heart raced, but fear gave me strength. Finally, I reached the staircase leading upwards and practically flew up the stairs. On the first floor, I burst through the broken door outside, collapsing onto the ground, gasping with both terror and relief. Looking back, I saw the silhouette of the torturer standing at the hospital entrance, silently watching me. Then he slowly faded into the darkness of the building. I stood up, turned away, and ran, realizing I'd never be able to forget what I'd seen. I never uploaded that video, but that night remains forever my worst nightmare.